Hello and welcome to a conversation with the Honorable Alexander Benedict Cummings, candidate for President of Liberia. I'm Adam Powell, Director of Washington Programs for the University of Southern California Annenberg Center for Communication, Leadership, and Policy, which is presenting coverage of next month's election in Liberia in partnership with the Amos Claudius Sawyer Foundation. Other candidates, of course, have also been invited to participate in these forums, and we'll bring them to you as they come in. There will be time later for your questions and comments, but first, to begin our conversation, we go to Dr. Bob Wekesa, Deputy Director of the African Center for the Study of the United States at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. He's also the inaugural Africa Visiting Fellow at the USC Annenberg Washington Center. Bob Wekesa.
You are most welcome, and we value your presence here. We are glad that you could make time today to be with us as we discuss not only elections in Liberia, but also weigh in on the future of the country with one of the presidential candidates whom we shall be listening to shortly. In terms of a very brief introduction, and I say brief advisedly, because Mr. Alexander B. Cummings has a very long and honorable career. He is, of course, as I've mentioned, a presidential candidate, a leading presidential candidate for the Liberian elections that are going to be held on October 10th, in just a few days. Just to give you a sense of who Mr. Cummings is that he was born in Monrovia, to a father who was an educator and an Episcopal prelate, and a mother who was a small business owner. After elementary and secondary education, he studied for his Bachelor of Arts degree in Finance and Economics at the Northern Illinois University, and thereafter proceeded to an MBA in Finance from Clark Atlanta University. We are actually summarizing key highlights of his career, but suffice to say that immediately after completing studies in the US, he worked at the Liberian Bank of Development and Investment, followed by the position of Vice President of Finance for Pillsbury International, a company, an entity that where he helped grow food-related business of over $1 billion US. I think the major highlight of his career from my reading of his works and looking at his contribution to society begins in 1997, when he joined the Coca-Cola company. From 1997 onwards, he had stints in Africa, Europe, and the United States. From that year, he actually rose to managing director for Coca-Cola in Nigeria. In 2001, he became president and chief operating officer of the company's Africa Group, covering the entirety of the continent, 56 countries and territories. And later on, he became executive vice president and chief administrative officer of the company, which was in fact the second highest ranking position, and was responsible for nearly 200 countries across the company's 5 groups. Towards 2015, he founded and is actually currently the chairman of the Cummings Investments Holding Limited. He retired from the corporate world in 2016 to focus on his home country, Liberia. And we shall be hearing more about that. Mr. Cummings also has a large footprint in the philanthropy world. He runs the Cummings Africa Foundation since 2015. He received the highest honor in Liberia, that of Humane Order of African Redemption in 2015 as well. You allow me not to go through all the board positions that he holds or has been involved with, but suffice to say that he's been associated with SC Johnson & Son, Incorporated, with Chevron, Coca-Cola, Company Consolidated boards. He's been on the board of Africa American Institute, which is a well-known entity, as well as the Corporate Council on Africa. And I think it will be remiss not to mention that Mr. Cummings is married to Teresa for over 40 years and has 2 sons and 5 grandchildren. I think at this point, you'll allow me, therefore, not to go on with the introduction, but rather let Mr. Cummings himself, introduce himself or say a few words before we launch into the discussion. Welcome.
But thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation, and I look forward to a conversational and interactive discussion. So, Bob, thank you very much.
I'll just launch straight into my first, not really question, but open-ended point of conversation, if we may put it that way. And we'll be keen for you to let us know more about the motivations for your involvement in the Liberian politics, and particularly the establishment of the Alternative National Congress, where you serve as leader and standard bearer, as well as your involvement in the formation of the collaborating political parties. I believe that will give us a good entry, and then we'll proceed from there. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I often say I entered Liberian politics and my aspiration to serve Liberia as its leader, as its president, is because I often say I've been very blessed in life, blessed to have had, wonderful parents. That wasn't a choice. It was a blessing, who taught me the value of hard work, good values, integrity. I've had the opportunity and the blessings of living and working in Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, the United States, United Kingdom. I've managed large, complex organizations and gained a lot of experience from actually doing that. And as I thought about my life and career, I believe that these blessings, these opportunities was part of the preparation for me to come and help Liberia, help the country of my birth. I often say Liberia deserves better. We can do better as a people, as a country. And if you want to impact all 5.2 million Liberians, the presidency is the role to do it through. Yes, I'm a philanthropist, and most of my philanthropy is in Liberia, so you can impact people on that level and at that scale. Yes, I'm an investor in a few businesses in Liberia, and people benefit from that as a result. But again, if you want to impact the entire population, the presidency is a job through which you can do that. I often also say that the presidency for me is not a destination, it's a means to an end. The presidency gives you the opportunity to work with Liberians so that we can collectively change the direction of our country and restore good governance and economic growth to Liberia. The ANC, I did not start the ANC. I actually joined the ANC, the Alternative National Congress. I was determined that as I entered Liberian politics, that I didn't want to create another political party. We have actually too many political parties. We need some political consolidation. The standards, the bar for forming political parties, for aspiring for office is actually too low. But that's for a different discussion. But I didn't want to compound this issue of the number of the proliferation of political entities. So I joined the ANC. I liked their vision, their mission, their values, their beliefs. And so I joined, and together with the partisans of the party, we've now created a political institution that is amongst the biggest political parties in Liberia. But again, it was one that I joined and worked together with partisans to create this entity that has allowed me to compete for the highest office in our country in 2017 and now again in 2023. We decided to join the CPP, the Collaborating Political Parties, again, because I believe that consolidating these institutions provided the opportunity to get some scale. Talent is a challenge in our country, so by collaborating, by coming together, you get the benefit of more talent, of more skills. And coming together increased the likelihood that we could defeat an incumbent in the person of President George Weah. So for all of these reasons, it made sense to try to work together. One of our challenges in Liberia is that we struggle to work together as a people. We find all kinds of reasons to not collaborate, to not work together. Many of these reasons are for selfish purposes. And so coming together in the CPP was an opportunity to break some of these old paradigms. And so we agreed and we came together to form the CPP. Unfortunately, the original 4 members of the CPP did not hold together, Bob, and two broke away. But 2 of those political parties that started the CPP are still together in the form of Liberty Party and ANC. And together, we believe we will win the presidency in the next 2 weeks on October 10th. Because again, collaboration, working together is something I think as a people, we need to learn how to do. So just a bit of background of my aspirations to serve our country as its leader and why I'm doing it. The reasons why I joined the ANC to try to make it a bigger part, a bigger entity, and also the reasons why we decided to come together with the CPP to collaborate to help increase our chances of replacing President Weah in these elections in the next 2 weeks.
Thank you very much for those introductory remarks. And as you are talking, I had the sense that you are applying corporate governance, management practices, even as you're speaking about consolidation of disparate forces. And that leads me to another point of discussion, which is having been primarily in the private sector and in philanthropy, what are the characteristics or traits? What are some of the lessons that you think can apply from the private sector to the political world? We normally think that the political world is absolutely different, but you seem to be applying those. Maybe you can break that down for us. Yeah.
Sure. So I often say, and I will get to your question directly, Bob, but I often say, if government experience was a solution to Liberia's problems, we will have the best country in the world. And I believe that we need to do things differently. The famous quote from Albert Einstein, you can't keep doing the same things and expect different results. I think it's something that, unfortunately, we've done in our country. And clearly, the results have not changed. We are the oldest republic in Africa, 176 years old. And yet, we're amongst the least developed countries in the world, certainly on the continent. And so we do need to do things differently. We need different kinds of experience to move our country forward. Today, our private sector is very small, it's almost non-existent. There's a mental model, a construct that everything is about the government. It clearly hasn't worked. As you all know, the government is not the job creator. The government enables, creates the right environment for the private sector to create jobs and grow. And I bring private sector experience. I bring a clear understanding of economics and the economy and what it takes to grow the private sector, to create jobs, to create new sectors, to change the construct of how our country is structured and organized today. But there are some things that are different, private sector versus government, and there are some things that are the same or should be the same. So whether you're in government or you're in the private sector, particularly at the level that I ended up participating, you're managing large, complex organizations. You got to get the right team of people. You have to make choices. You have to set priorities. You can't try to be all things to all people. You can't try to do everything at the same time because you do nothing well. You have to deliver results in the private sector to your customers, to your consumers, in government to your voters. I describe government is the executive branch, is the sort of operating management, if you will, the legislature is like your board of directors. Those are some of the parallels I make. It's different in the sense that in the private sector, in any profession, you select to be a business person or lawyer or engineer or doctor. And that self-selection, you got people with similar traits, perhaps similar values, similar way of thinking of doing things. In government, in politics, you have everybody. You have the lawyers, the doctors, the engineers, the motorcyclists, the farmers, the pimp boys. And so it adds a different level of complexity in terms of how you manage government, if you will, compared to being in the private sector. But the things that are common are what I think will make a difference. The right team of people, the right choices, the right priorities, holding people accountable, focus on results, not on activities. Those things are common, I think, to both sectors and has been lacking in government. And this is what I hope to bring to government. Yes, understanding the politics, understanding the identity nature, the tribal nature of our politics in Liberia, you got to marry those two things. But I think the private sector experience is what will make a difference and will propel our country into the 21st century.
Thank you very much. And as we are talking again, the linkages are very clear. I liked your point around the legislature being like the board of directors and, the executive branch being in the driver's seat half the time. And I think that suggests to me that you have a vision, as you might have had for Coca-Cola and for other organizations. I've read that you have a vision of a 21st century Liberia, which suggests that maybe Liberia is not currently 21st century. But we'd like you to break down for us what really you envision in terms of a Liberia of the 21st century.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. As I travel around Liberia, if any of you have been to our country, I mean, our people are basically living in the 19th century almost. It's almost a feudal society. People are living, we're all running water or electricity, still in mud huts. And yet our country, I often say it's so rich for us to be so poor. And we need to propel Liberia with speed, with a lot of energy, with a lot of hard work into the 21st century. And the 21st century Liberia for us means that we, first of all, and the foundation of that is we have to fix the infrastructure. The United States government, the USAID, did a study in Liberia, some 15, 20 years ago, where they identified what they call the two binding constraints to unleashing economic growth in Liberia, amongst many others. But the two key ones they identified were roads and electricity. And so as we think about infrastructure in Liberia and what will be foundational to bringing us into the 21st century is we've identified roads, electricity, running water, and technology, making sure the country is connected, cellular network, Wi-Fi network across the country. Those are the four pillars of infrastructure that we think is paramount to bring Liberia again into the 21st century. Beyond that, we talk about the need to fix our educational system. And again, if we have time, we can get into the details, because in our vision for Liberia, Bob, we talk about what needs to be done, and we talk about the how we would do those things. And what you will find that amongst all political parties, everybody is clear on what we need to do. The priorities might be different, how we describe it, these whats might be different, but the basic whats are the same. But how we plan to implement those whats is what I think differentiates us from the rest of the field. But infrastructure is foundational for us, is key. And infrastructure, as I define, roads, electricity, running water, and technology. Fixing the educational system. Within the educational system, we have to prioritize what we fix first. And again, if we have time, we can talk about what those priorities are within education. Healthcare, another priority. Again, within healthcare, we have to prioritize within the priorities. So we're very clear on what those priorities are. We believe we need to invest in agriculture. Today, we import everything we consume. Our economy is based on the extractive industry, iron ore, gold, diamonds, etc. And we need to rebase our economy and make it a more agro-based economy. If you look next door to the Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, our next door neighbor, primarily an agro-based economy, and therefore doing a lot better than we are, we believe. We also believe we need to invest in ecotourism in Liberia, a quick way to take advantage of, 350 miles of beaches, one of the top 5, 10 rainforests, villages, waterfalls, an easy way to create service-oriented jobs because our population is challenged in terms of skills and education. So we want to invest in ecotourism. Just as an aside, if you Google top 10 surfing locations in the world, Liberia will pop up, rapper sport. We need to take advantage of that natural given opportunity. So our priorities are infrastructure, education, healthcare, investing in agriculture, developing an ecotourism industry. And we believe that we do those things, we'll create jobs. We want to do those things primarily a combination of private-public partnerships, getting the private sector involved across the board in all of these things. And that's how we think we can do things differently and, again, propel Liberia into the 21st century.
Thank you. I think you've painted a good picture of where you would like to see Liberia go in the next couple of years. But it also begs the question, and I'm again, going back to your illustrious career in the private sector, where I suspect you had to have means of, securing capital for investment, for operations, and managing profits and so forth. So I think this is a finance end of things. How do you generate resources, or how do you acquire the financial muscle necessary to achieve this vision? Of course, there's been discussions around foreign direct investment, but also productive sectors within the country itself, but also concerns about loans and so forth, not just in Liberia, but other African countries. But in a nutshell, where is the money going to come from? Let me be more direct that way.
Yeah, so let's talk about the house who will do these things, and finding the money is one of the house amongst 2 or 3 others. So in our house, we talk about how do we find the money, to your point, Bob, to address all of these issues. And so one of the first ways we'll find the money is we'll stop the stealing, we'll stop the corruption. Corruption has killed more Liberians, if you go back to the beginnings of our country, than even our protracted civil war. So we have to go after the waste in government. We have to go after the stealing in government and redirect, repurpose those monies into these areas I described. Liberia is among the most corrupt, not because I come and say so, but by any measure. And it's something we are going to go after vehemently. And if we have time, we can talk about how we plan to do that. So that's one source of funding, is to get rid of the waste and stop the stealing that takes place today, where monies and resources are wasted. Second thing we'll do in terms of finding the money is to make sure we're getting full value from our natural resources. This is not about changing agreements we currently have. I think that would be a mistake to try to rewrite agreements. You will never get other investors to come. We have to honor the agreements we've. But I do not believe today we get full value from our current resource extraction, our current agreements. So we'll ensure that those investors who are here today, who are mining the iron ore, the gold, the diamonds, the rubber, whatever, that we're getting full value per the agreements we have. That, we believe, will be another source of revenue for us. Third source of revenue is we're going to revisit the whole tax structure and make sure we're expanding the tax base, make sure our revenue collection, tax collection, is effective and efficient, and not overburdening any one particular sector, but broadening it, simplifying it, and we believe there's monies to be generated from doing that. And then the fourth area is we're going to look at loans, at leverage. Governments today borrow, private sector borrow, but it's how you use the leverage, it's how you use the debt, it's where you deploy it. Today, a lot of the debt the Liberian government has taken on has gone into recurring expenditure. Makes absolutely no sense. We have to leverage debt and invest it in more productive, more things that will generate income and revenue for the economy, for the government. So we'll look at leverage, look at debt as another source of income. And unfortunately, I really, I hate saying this, but, in the immediate future, we will look for help from our development partners to also help to us to develop our country. But my goal is that over time, Liberia will become self-sufficient and will not need the help of, the United States or the European Union or whoever. But to be realistic, to be practical, we'll need some help in the short term, and we will, go looking for that with the clear understanding that we will reduce that dependence over time, and that United States taxpayers' money, European taxpayer monies will be used wisely so that over time we don't need them to come and subsidize our development. But that's how we think about how we find the funding for these priorities. And if I may, some of the other house we've talked about is how we're can use technology to help move us forward, whether it's in education, in healthcare, in agriculture. In all of these areas, we believe technology can be a lever. That's why it's part of our infrastructure priority. And so we will focus on how we can leverage technology, to help us in all of these areas I've described. And last but most importantly, we talk about, and we're actually doing work on this, how do we engage the hearts and minds of Liberians to actively own this country, own the problems, own the challenges, own the solutions, tell our own stories. And so we're doing work on, look, how can you intentionally and deliberately use sports, arts and culture, music, religion to influence how we think about ourselves, how we can work together. If you think about sports, it teaches teamwork. It teaches you should follow the rules of the game, for example. Religion needs to teach you right from wrong. So we want to be intentional about how arts, music, culture. We have a very young country. 65% of Liberians are under the age of 35. The median age of Liberia is 19. So how can we use sports, music, arts, culture, theater to influence how we think about ourselves, how we think about our countries, how we can find solutions? So engaging hearts and minds is another one of the hows we think we can change how our country is led, how it's managed, how we interact, how we collaborate with each other. And so we are focused and intentional about how we can use those things to help us do that.
Thank you. I must admit you are very articulate and well thought out on the strategies and the plans ahead. I believe at this point in time, we want to indeed have a conversation, and what a better way of a conversation than, kind of looking at what participants, our colleagues on the call today have to ask of you. So there's I'll go through some of the questions very in a more direct way. One is quite linked to what we just were concluding with, which is digital arts and the digital economy. And the question is, how about a potential proposal to establish Liberia's Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Technology to participate in the digital era of today? And I think a related question there is, what are the possibilities of the larger population and regions and the geography of Liberia having access to the internet through, for example, fiber optic cables? So over to you.
Yeah, so, again, Bob, one of our priorities I mentioned was infrastructure. And within infrastructure, I mentioned technology. And that is, again, making sure the country is connected to the internet. And so that will be a priority. That's something we have to find the resources to do. that's something on day one. We will meet and have conversations with the two major cell phone companies in Liberia to see how we can work and partner with them to make sure the country is entirely connected. Today you drive around our country, and there's some parts of the country you can drive for hours and be completely out of connection with the rest of the world. That cannot be in the 21st century. So we want to make that a priority. We want to focus on that. We will reach out to, the Googles of the world and the other big technology providers to see how we can partner with them to make sure Liberia is connected. I often say Liberia is a small country with 5.2 million people. I want to offer up Liberia as a place where people can come and test things, can come and pilot things. So the technology companies want to come and pilot whatever, and then they can go sell it to the rest of the world. But we got to be creative. We got to be innovative. We got to think differently. I often say in Liberia, we eat a lot of pepper, spices, right? And we are very protective of this pepper bush, but there's nothing in the pepper bush. So let's grow some pepper, and then, so we'll experiment. We will take some risk. But technology is a key focus areas of ours, and so we have to find the resources. We have to make it a priority. We have to work with vendors to find ways to fund it, to finance it, because I believe it's a big enabler of what will move us forward. An example I will use in education, for example, we want to focus on teachers training at all levels, because if you don't have good quality instructors, at university level, whatever level, secondary, primary, middle school, you're not going to have good output. You're not going to have good students. So because today we don't have a dearth of, strong teachers, let's use technology. You have a good, strong math, science teacher. He or she can sit wherever in the country, and through technology, they can teach students around the country. And even today, as rudimentary, as basic as our technology is, that is possible. So a simple example of how fully connected technology can be the bridge until we get more qualified teachers that can teach in person around the country. So yes, technology is, we are actually going to create an office of technology to focus on that. We want to move the country to e-government. That will help with this corruption, with this stealing stuff, get stuff off paper, get it. I mean, everything today you can do on this phone, literally. And there's no reason why, over time we can make that happen in Liberia. And we are clear on the vision to do that. And again, to put the resources, because that will propel many of these other things we want to do. So technology is a big enabler of how we will solve our educational, healthcare, infrastructure, and other challenges.
Thank you. I think it's greatly appreciated that you indeed as well appreciate the role and place of technology. And I think at this point, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Adam Clayton Powell, to take over in terms of further engagement. Over to you, Adam. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. We're getting quite a few questions. I'll try to take them in order. From Bill Siemering, founder of Developing Radio Partners in Africa, also perhaps best known in the United States as one of the pioneers of public radio and the creator of All Things Considered. His question, what is the role of China in developing infrastructure in West Africa?
Yeah, so China, to be honest, has helped develop infrastructure across Africa. It's just a fact. Many of the Western countries have not been enablers or providers of infrastructure. Now, that has come at a cost. It hasn't been free. And so our interest is Liberia. Of course, we have a long historical relationship with the United States. As most of you may know on this call, Liberia was settled by free slaves from the United States in the 1800s. Liberia today, on a per capita basis, will probably be in the top 10 of recipients of US aid on a per capita basis. So We want to make sure we continue to nurture that relationship with the Americans and the Europeans as well. But we got to look after Liberia at the end of the day, and will not close the door to the Chinese. The terms got to be on a basis that is mutually beneficial. But China has contributed to Africa's infrastructure development to a limited extent in Liberia, and our doors will be open to all. Our focus will be on the economic growth of Liberia, and our interest will be about Liberia and Liberians' economic growth. And as I mentioned, Adam, infrastructure is key. So whether it's Europeans, Americans, Chinese, or others, we will be open to that. It will come down to, many cases, the economics of that, who can deliver the best at the best cost. And we'll manage all the complexities of the global relationships. We're not naive about the competition and the challenges, and we'll just have to thread that needle and manage it to make sure Liberians benefit in the end.
Thank you. We have a question from Bill Preston. Can you share an example of a specific public-private sector healthcare program in Liberia?
No, I can't share a specific one. I think there are a few. There's the last mile project in terms of healthcare, but beyond that, no, Adam, I don't have specifics to answer that question.
And we have a question from my colleague Sam Garrison in Los Angeles. What strategies and actions are you focused on in these final weeks before the election?
We are focused on making the case. This last 2 weeks, we will be traveling aggressively around the country. We're reminding Liberians that this election is pivotal. As I think I mentioned earlier, but if not, there are 20 people running for the presidency, too many, I think. But there are 3 main candidates. All the polling shows, the current president, former vice president, myself. And I describe the choice as follows. Liberians can vote for the past and return to the former ruling party, return to the former vice president, so you can go back to the past. And if you like that, that's your choice. You can vote for the president, the current president, if you like the direction of the country, where people are, how they're feeling, they're suffering, the challenges. That's the other choice. Or you can vote for a better future. And you can vote for the Cummings pumpkin ticket. And so we will be making that case across Liberia. This discussion is part of the effort to make that case, because I know many Liberians are participating and calling in. And so using the media, traveling, we're going to have rallies. We have a major rally here in Monrovia on this Sunday, and we'll be traveling to other parts of the country to close the campaign and to make the case in the last 2 weeks, 14 days to election. So, and we're confident that we will make the runoff.
Thank you. A related question: do you expect the elections to be free and fair?
I hope it is. It is incumbent upon this government to ensure that that happens. The way our constitution is written, the president, the executive branch, manages and controls that process. The 7 election commissioners, there are 7 election commissioners, are all appointed by the president. Unlike the previous government, where Mr. Sirleaf at the time allowed the opposition to nominate 3 of the 7 commissioners. In fact, the current chairman of the commission today was nominated by the CDC under her administration. This government chose not to do that and to appoint all 7 commissioners. So it just begs the question about perhaps the partisan nature of the commission. But I'm hopeful that it will be fair and transparent. But there are lots of questions that, raises some red flags. about whether that will be the case or not. But the most important point to make is that it is the responsibility of President Weah and his government to make sure that is the case. And we remind him that the beginning of the unraveling of Liberia was around the 1985 elections that were completely rigged, and it started the slow unraveling of our country. And I hope he learns from the history and he shows that our elections are free, fair, and transparent. In the meantime, given the limited resources we have, we're going to try to make sure we're monitoring the elections. We have poll watchers across the country, primarily in the rural areas. We know that the EU has sent folks to observe. I believe the Americans will, the African Union, ECOWAS. But at the end of the day, it's up to us Liberians and the president and his government to make sure the elections are free, fair, and transparent. But direct answer to your question is we do have some concerns about whether or not that will be the case. And we're hoping that the results as announced will reflect the will of the Liberian people.
Thank you. Another question from Los Angeles from my colleague Emmanuel Johnson. He refers to the 1934 book titled Liberia in World Politics, which argues that at the time Liberia served as a beacon of hope that people of African descent globally have the ability to govern themselves. Given the current world climate, what do you think is Liberia's current role in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure Liberia has a defined role in the world, unfortunately, and that's something we need to establish. Liberia, have a lot of firsts that we need to be proud of. So I believe the first African to have graduated from Harvard University was a Liberian. The origins of the African Union, which was the OAU, those initial meetings and conversations started in Liberia in what called the Seneca Conference, where President Tubman of Liberia, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Secretary of Guinea, and a few others started the concept of what is now the African Union, used to be the Organization of African Unity. The whole concept of development banks, Liberian economists were involved in thinking through that. So we need to restore our leadership in the world. We do need to still be this beacon of hope. One of the things we'll do is we'll re-engage the African diaspora. We'll re-engage African Americans because of the historical ties between the two countries. The Ghanaians have done a good job, and we applaud them of, the whole year of the return, and they've leveraged the connection between Africa and African Americans. And many African Americans today spend lots of money in Ghana. We're going to look to do that as well because we are the natural home of return. So again, I don't think we have a defined role today. I think Liberia has unfortunately, partly due to the extended civil war, but certainly due to the current leadership, our country is regressing, and we'll look to restore that leadership role, to restore the connections between ourselves and African Americans, and just take advantage of the history of our country, to leverage that to move Liberia forward and to become, once again, this beacon of hope in Africa.
You are attracting some interesting offers of assistance. One from Professor Johnson, whose question was just asked, says, as a Liberian and artificial intelligence researcher here at USC, exploring how AI can improve education, I look forward to bringing my expertise to bear on the country. What opportunities will you provide for people such as myself to bring our skill set to the country in hopes of addressing these issues?
Yeah, we will create the right environment for people like Professor Johnson to come to return home, to come and help the country. Part of the big push on infrastructure, for example, is to actually do that so that people can have electricity all the time that's affordable, can have running water, can have the technology environment to enable AI to work and help us solve issues. So creating the right environment, environment that is safe, restoring the rule of law. So I see the government's role as to create an environment, and then hopefully Liberians will come and take the risk and come and contribute and come and serve, come and support the country so that we can move forward. But we welcome all Liberians to return home. Today there's this rift diasporans and locals. For me, that's nonsense. If you're Liberian, you want to come and contribute, we're going to welcome you. We don't want people coming home with a condescending attitude, kind of know it all. But with the right attitude, create the right environment, and all Liberians are welcome. This is not a zero-sum game. This is not a win and you lose. Everybody can win if this country is well managed. And we'll encourage other Liberians and anybody, frankly, who wants to come and help in a genuine way. Our doors are open, will be welcome, as long as, this is mutually beneficial and Liberians have to disproportionately benefit from their country. And we make no apologies for that, but everybody can win. Everybody can benefit, and we create environments so that happens.
One final audience question. You have strong connections to major corporations in the United States. Will you be able to use your past professional business relationships to bring their talents and resources to Liberia to help accelerate real economic development?
The answer is absolutely yes, Adam. But I often say, major companies, major investors will not come to Liberia just because they know me or because they know of me. That helps. That perhaps open the door. But we have to create the right environment for them to come and thrive and be successful. The risk profile that we offer has to be more competitive than other countries, other markets, because they have a choice of where to invest or where to put the money. And even starting in the sub-region, right? You look at the whole sub-region, the whole ECOWAS sub-region, and if our environment is more risky than Ghana, Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, or Nigeria, the capital will flow where it's less risky. So we have to create an environment that is competitive, that provide actually less risk than the other markets we compete with in the sub-region and in fact in the world. And if we do those things, and the fact that I have those relationships, they know me, it would just be a bonus. It would just be a plus, and we'll be able to attract the investors we need to come and help develop Liberia. Liberia is a small country, 5.2 million people, GDP less than 4 billion, which it should be much bigger, but for a different discussion. But we are part of ECOWAS, this massive sub-region. So 5.2 million Liberians, the ECOWAS sub-region is well over 300 million people, right? So you can set up shop in Liberia and you have this much bigger market. But again, we have to make the environment competitive, attractive, relatively low risk compared to the other countries we compete with. And if we do those things, plus the relationships we have, I'm very confident that we'll attract the right kinds of investors to help us grow and develop our country.
Thank you. And let's go back to Bob Wekesa.
Thank you very much, Adam, and even more so, Honorable Cummings, for giving us quite some structured, forward-looking, and I should say, business-inclined propositions. We want to wish you well on your campaign trail and on the election date, but I think we cannot let you go without giving us your final words, your closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Adam. Thanks to all of you who have participated. Thanks for all the great questions. The first thing I would say, if you know any Liberians and any Liberians listen to me, get folks to come and support me. Get them to come and encourage them to come and vote if they can, or to call friends and relatives in Liberia to give us support, because to execute all of these great plans, we need the opportunity to first win and then to serve our country. But I'm confident that, as I mentioned, we'll make the runoff, and when we do, we'll win the election. and we'll begin the journey of transforming our country. I'm excited about Liberia's future. I'm excited about, the fact that, we can bring Liberia into the 21st century with hard work, with diligence, with focus. And I'm also confident, as I said, that we'll have the opportunity to do that. So thank you all very much. I want to thank the Amos Sawyer Foundation for organizing this forum. And when we win, we'll be happy to come back and begin to share our progress as we move forward. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Cummings. I think you've closed on that note of get out the vote. I think I would have been surprised if you didn't end on that note. And so for me, I think you ticked the right box at the end of the call. And we wish you well, as mentioned. I think it's open competition, and we'll be observing and watching from not only the US, but from the rest of the African continent and the world. And for our guests and participants, we also want to thank you very much. We want to particularly thank Mr. Frank Sawyer, with whom we worked very closely on the Sawyer Foundation in putting together this virtual meeting. And I think that's all we have. I think I'll return this to Adam. I think that's the order of things here. Thank you. Right.
And please let me join you in expressing thanks to the Honorable Alexander Benedict Cummings. On a personal note, you're bringing back memories of my many trips to Roberts Field serving Monrovia. So look forward to returning. Our thanks also to Bob Wekesa and to all of you for joining us. We will keep you all informed about our future programs about the Liberian election. And our next monthly regularly scheduled Africa-US Forum is going to be on Monday, October 23rd on technology and governance. And until then, thanks to you all, and we're adjourned.